Hi everyone. I don't usually add intros into my videos, but I think it's necessary for this one. This story was written by me, and it does contain themes of baby loss, grief, and pregnancy. Please take care before listening, or feel free to browse my other videos. There should be one up in the corner, also written by me, that you might enjoy a little more. My aim is to always bring you enjoyment in the form of horror, and the last thing I want to do is trigger someone who's going through a rough time. And if that's you right now, please look after yourself. And if you're still here, let's get into the story. I used to think silence was empty. Turns out it's just the sound of secrets, too heavy for words. Every creak in our old floors, every sigh of wind against the windows. I'd swear it was Ethan whispering another woman's name. The late-night texts, those murmured calls from the porch. I stacked them up like evidence in a trial only I knew was coming. I wasn't guessing. I was certain. That certainty clanked against my ribs every time I walked into the room, and he would flip his phone face down like the glow of another message could end the world. I was ready to confront him, ready to torch the whole damn marriage, because I just knew he was already halfway out the door with someone else. Spoiler, I was wrong. The truth, whatever this was, crawled out of the basement instead. 7 years in, Maple Street felt like forever. We'd bought the place for the wraparound porch, fixed the squeaky step together, planted lavender like we were setting down roots you could smell. Year 5, though, the music skipped. After the miscarriages, the rooms ballooned out. Too much space where a crib should have gone. Too much quiet where laughter should have been. I felt like a failure. I was unable to do the one thing I was meant for. The doctor told us there was nothing wrong with either of us. These things happen, he said, but I just knew Ethan blamed me. After the 3rd miscarriage, he started growing distant. Despite my failures, I wasn't suspicious. I thought our marriage was strong enough to see this through, and his little project in the basement would help him cope with the loss. I was told men grieve differently. I'd never seen him cry. Not even when Oscar was born at 19 weeks. He was absolutely beautiful. 10 fingers, 10 toes. A boy too perfect for this world. They call it born asleep, and that's just how he looked. We got to hold him for a few hours before they needed to take him. I cried and cried and cried. Ethan didn't. He held me in a way that looked comforting, but I could tell he was disappointed in me. When he told me he needed some me time to sort his head, I didn't protest. I left him alone down there to build his man cave. I must admit I was surprised, though, when instead of hauling wood and nails down those creaking stairs, he carried bags of salt, oils, candles, a heavy old book I didn't recognize. Listen, I'm not judging. If he wanted a secret man spa, fine. But looking back, I realized he wasn't trying to escape his grief. He was bargaining with it. He would spend every Friday night locked in that room. Whatever he was doing seemed to be working for him, so I left it alone. After about 2 months, he started looking at me again. Really looking. Like I wasn't just a reminder of everything we'd lost. By the 3rd month, when I told him the heavy scent of patchouli oil was making me throw up, he just smiled and quietly packed everything away. I found out I was pregnant with Jessie that same week. Strange thing was, when I told Ethan, it was like he already knew. I'd been nervous about breaking the news. He was so happy lately, and I knew this pregnancy would be filled with dread just like the last and the one before that. Pregnancy should be a time of joy and excitement, but for people in our position that excitement is replaced with worry, anxiety, and whispered prayers to gods you don't even believe in, begging not to have it end the same way. Some people pray for a boy or a girl. I prayed to just have a baby at the end of it all. Ethan, though, he wasn't worried in the slightest. "It's going to be okay this time," he said one evening as I soaked his t-shirt with tears. "You can't possibly know that." "I do. I can feel it, Cara. We have someone watching over us this time." I thought he meant Oscar, our perfect angel watching our rainbow baby grow safely. I didn't know it then, but that's not what he meant at all. He was right, nonetheless. The pregnancy was a breeze. The 12-week scan showed a tiny, wiggly bean stretching and twitching on the screen just as it should. Of course, I agreed to every extra measurement and blood test they offered. Her Down syndrome screening came back as 1 in 100,000, which was a shock considering both my cousin and his cousin have Down syndrome. Not that it would have mattered in the slightest, I just wanted my baby, extra chromosome or not. Jessie was born bang on 40 weeks. The labour was manageable, eased by soothing words from Ethan and my Spotify playlist. Very different from the out-of-control, morphine-induced haze of Oscar's birth. She weighed 7 pounds 11 ounces, with a shock of thick chestnut hair. Strange, considering I'm blonde and Ethan's brown. He joked about the milkman being the real father, and we laughed as we looked into our daughter's ocean blue eyes. We left the hospital a day later. Jessie fit into our home perfectly. Her clothes and blankets filled the once empty spaces. Her cries and gurgles smothered the silence in the most exhaustingly joyous way. I was the happiest woman on the planet. Was. It could only have been 4 or 5 weeks after we brought her home when I made the comment. We were curled on the sofa, watching Jessie drift in and out of sleep in her bouncer. Ethan had just come in from an unusually long shift at work. I don't know what I was thinking. Call it hormones, call it madness. But I said it. I want another one. Now I know. After all the struggles and heartache before Jessie, I should have been grateful. But in that moment, I just did. "No." Ethan's voice cracked like a whip. Jessie startled in her bouncer, tiny arms shooting out in a flinch. I froze, breath caught. He never raised his voice. Ethan sat forward instantly, rubbing his hands over his face as if he could scrub the word back into his throat. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." I crouched beside Jessie, rocking the bouncer gently until her whimper settled into a soft hiccup. My chest thudded with the echo of his reaction. When I looked back, he was trying to arrange his features into calm, but dread still leaked through. It's not the right time," he said. "Work's getting harder. I'm exhausted. We can't manage another right now." I tried to laugh it off, keep it light. "Oh God, I didn't mean this second. Just, someday. In the future." His eyes locked on mine, sharp as broken glass. "No, one's enough." The way he said it, flat, final, left no room for jokes. Jessie cooed between us, and I swallowed the argument pressing against my teeth. We had always planned on having a large family. Before the miscarriages, before the trouble, we'd talk for hours about 2 girls and 2 boys, what they might look like. Ethan would go on about teaching the boys his skills on the football pitch, how they'd grow up strong enough to protect their sisters. Yes, we'd had our struggles with the other babies, and I knew it had taken a toll on him too. But I thought we were finally moving forward. Christ, we'd bought this house because of how much space it had. It was meant to be full of children, not ghosts of the ones we never got to keep. After that night, he grew distant again. His occasional calls to say he was working late turned into at least 3 nights a week. After a while, he didn't even bother to call. I'd be pacing the kitchen at 9 o'clock, Jessie tight against my chest, his dinner stone cold on the table, and he'd saunter through the door like nothing was wrong. My what the fucks were always met with the same line. "Sorry, I forgot to let you know." Even then, I still didn't suspect cheating. How could any decent man play around when he knew he had a loving wife and a 4-month-old baby at home? Now I wish he had been cheating. When Jessie turned 6 months old, nothing had improved. Ethan spent hours away from the house, away from me. He'd take Jessie to his mum's and accidentally stay so late it was easier for Jessie if they stayed. Or he'd take her on adventures that lasted from dawn until dusk. At night, he blamed his sore back, preferring the sofa to our bed. I was losing him, and I needed to fix it. I needed to fix this issue I hadn't caused, or at least I didn't think I had. One rainy Friday, whilst Ethan was still at work, I packed Jessie's Peppa Pig backpack with all her essentials and favourite soft toys and took her to my mum's. After Jessie was born healthy, I promised myself I'd never use a babysitter, that no time alone was worth missing a moment of her life. But standing at my mum's door, ready to hand her over, I was convinced the best thing for my baby was to fix my marriage. By the time he got home, I had everything ready. I wore his favourite dress. I had his favourite meal, was waiting on the table. Turkey dinosaurs, smiley potato faces, and spaghetti hoops. What can I say? He's a simple guy. I had 12 cans of Foster's and 2 bottles of pre-mixed passion fruit martini on standby for the conversation to come. "Where's Jessie?" were the first words out of his mouth as he came through the door. I swallowed the disappointment at him not noticing my effort. It sank like a stone in my chest. "She's at my mum's," I said gently. I was trying to be as non-confrontational as possible. This needed to go well, or it could be the end of us. "Come and sit. I've made your favourite. I think we need to talk. Why is she at your mum's?" "Stop using her as a shield," the words snapped out before I could catch them. He froze in the doorway, keys still dangling from his hand. "A shield? What the hell does that mean?" "It means every time I try to talk to you, you hide behind Jessie. You dodge, you vanish, and I'm left here, wondering what I did wrong." He flung his keys in the bowl, dropped his phone and wallet onto the table, and walked past me like I hadn't said a word. He scraped the chair out opposite me and sat down, picking up a turkey dinosaur and biting into it without even looking at me. His phone vibrated loudly, cutting through the silence. It was closer than it had ever been before. I should have snatched it up. I should have gone through all the messages there and then. It would have changed everything. But I didn't. All I was able to see was the name of the sender, Alex, and the word impatient. He snatched the phone up and slid it back into his pocket. I tried to rationalize it, tried to play devil's advocate in my head. Impatient could have meant anything. Maybe Alex was a woman. Maybe she was waiting for him. That's what my gut told me. But it wasn't that. Not even close. Later, I'd learned what impatient really meant. My chest burned. "Do you even care anymore, Ethan? About me? About us?" He chewed slowly, then finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, ringed with something that wasn't just tiredness. "How could you say that?" he said flatly. "I'm doing this for you." "Yeah, great." "Thanks. The way to a woman's heart is distance and insecurity." "Well done," I set a can down in front of him a little too hard. "Sorry," I mumbled. He looked up again. "Remember when you tried to carry 5 shopping bags in from the car, and you dropped my beer but didn't tell me?" There was a ghost of something forming on his face. A smile. A smirk. I couldn't tell if this was his way of trying to diffuse the situation. "You opened the can straight away," I said, sliding into the chair opposite him. It sprayed up my nose. I couldn't help it. I laughed. The first real laugh we'd shared in months. He grinned, beer can still in his hand, and for a moment I saw the Ethan I'd fallen in love with. God, that was a nightmare. It hit the ceiling too, I said, covering my face with my hands. "You should have just told me," he chuckled. "Instead, I thought I'd been cursed." "Maybe you have," I teased, reaching for a passion fruit martini. I cracked it open and took a long sip, savouring the smooth tang as it burned down my throat. His face fell slightly when I said that, just a split second of a micro-expression I couldn't read. Then he smiled again. My own smile dropped when the ceiling above us gave a slow, deliberate creak. Jessie was at Mum's. The sound didn't make sense. I knew the floorboards in this house. I actively avoided the two creaky ones directly in front of Jessie's room when she was napping. The only thing that could make that sound was a footstep. Ethan's jaw stiffened. He tilted his head, listening, then shrugged. "Old house," he muttered, but his eyes lingered a beat too long on the ceiling. "I'll check," he added, pushing himself to his feet. There was a chill in the air, not the kind that made you cold, the kind that made you anxious. My eyes stayed fixed on the kitchen door as his footsteps faded upstairs. Then it came. A faint, cloying waft of patchouli, out of place and wrong, curling through the air like smoke. I wrinkled my nose and stretched my neck to try and spot Ethan coming back. Nothing. A draft brushed the back of my neck before the basement door gave a heavy thud as it swung shut. Not a slam, but hard enough to jar. I jumped, then froze. I was sure I'd closed it earlier. "Ethan?" My voice was too thin. I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. This house had always felt safe to me, but right then I felt like a child left alone in a strange place. I was about to go and look for him when I heard him padding down the stairs. He plopped himself back down, pale but trying to look casual. "Nothing there," he said, but his hand shook as he picked up his can. The smell still lingered. We sat in heavy silence for a few minutes, but as the prickle of alcohol hit our veins, we quickly reverted back to the teenage-like giggles. One can turned into two, then three. Jessie was safe at Mum's, and the house felt lighter. Like the walls weren't listening for once. We traded stories, half teasing, half serious. The kind of conversation that leaves you smiling but aching at the same time. We didn't talk about anything heavy. Right then I felt like I had him back, and all it took was some breaded turkey in the shape of an extinct creature, embarrassing nostalgia, and alcohol. By the time the cans were gone, we were sitting close. His knee brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. For one night at least, the distance between us blurred, and I felt whole again. The next morning, I woke, having slept the first full night in 6 months. I was rested, at peace, and surprisingly without hangover. I rolled over to find Ethan snoring softly beside me. "Morning," I said softly, stroking his bare shoulder. "How's the head?" Ethan stirred beside me, eyes fluttering open. For a second, he looked startled to see me there, then forced a quick smile. "Morning," he muttered, sitting up and swinging his legs off the bed. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Did we? You know." I sat up, blinking at him. "Oh, I'm not actually sure." The worry that crossed his face was almost comical. He started glancing around the room like he'd lost something. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "A condom packet or something?" he muttered. Ethan, I laughed, shaking my head. Did you forget I'm your wife? It's fine. We haven't done anything wrong. I don't have any diseases. And you don't, do you? No, of course I don't, he snapped. I recoiled, that familiar sting of rejection flaring in my chest all over again. Sorry, he said quickly, rubbing his face. I just meant, you're not on anything, are you? I could get you pregnant or something. I forced a smile, trying to brush it off like a misunderstanding, but the words still stung. He didn't want more kids with me. He'd made that crystal clear. Relax, I said softly. I'm due in a few days anyway. The chances of anything happening are basically zero. He nodded, but his jaw stayed tight, eyes fixed anywhere but mine. I told myself it was nothing, just a slip, just nerves. Still, a tiny thread of distrust began to knot in my chest, pulling tighter every time I remembered that conversation on the sofa. The days slipped by, ordinary on the surface but full of little things that dug under my skin. Ethan was quieter again. He was still distant. Every so often he would come in for a kiss or a hug, then pull away again. It was like, now I knew he was distancing himself. He tried to throw me off. He would still take Jessie on their adventures, but now he would invite me. We would have a lovely day, but when we got home, he would make his bed on the sofa again. It was an emotional roller coaster. I kept telling myself not to overthink it, that I was being hormonal, paranoid, whatever excuse made it easier to swallow. But the memory of his face that morning, the sharp way he recoiled at the thought of me getting pregnant, wouldn't let me rest. I blamed my late period on stress at first, then on my tracking app not working properly. But when 2 weeks passed, my stomach sank with a mix of dread and disbelief. I bought a test that day. After I used it, I shoved it into my bedside drawer and left it there, like hiding it might make it less real. It was hours before I worked up the courage to look. 2 pink lines, clear as day. I sat with it for weeks. The nausea I blamed on bad milk. The bone-deep tiredness I blamed on Jessie's teething. Every excuse I could reach for, I used. Anything but the truth, tucked away in my bedside drawer. Ethan didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to ask. He was distracted, jittery, always finding reasons to be out of the house. When he was home, he'd pace or sit, staring at nothing, like a man waiting for a storm he couldn't stop. Sometimes I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. It wasn't love, and it wasn't hate. It was something colder. Calculation, maybe. And still I said nothing. There was something he wasn't telling me. Hypocritical, I know, but I had my reasons. No wife should be terrified of telling her husband that he got her pregnant. At the end of the day, I didn't get myself pregnant. He did this to me. I might have consented, yes, but if someone asked you to kill them and you pulled the trigger, you'd be the one on trial. You'd be the one sentenced, not the person who asked for it. One afternoon he was sitting at the kitchen table, watching me in that silent way he sometimes did. His eyes followed me as I stood, and I made a beeline for the basement. That's where the bleach was kept. No! He shot up so fast his chair screeched across the tiles. I'll get it. I froze on the step. What's your problem? It's just bleach. I said I'll get it, he snapped, already brushing past me toward the door. I stared at his back, a dozen answers running through my head. He didn't want me down there, and that stung worse than the words themselves. I stood at the top of the basement steps, heart thudding. He'd never snapped like that before, not over something so stupid. The smell of patchouli oil hit me like a brick wall. I staggered back, taking shallow breaths, trying to hide the nausea. It's just bleach, Ethan. I can carry a bottle without shattering into pieces. I said I'll get it, he barked again, voice too sharp, too fast. He padded up the stairs, walking straight past me with the bleach, and put it next to the sink. I turned to face him, crossing my arms. What the hell is down there you don't want me to see? Another woman? Drugs? A man's spa? What? His eyes flicked past me, toward the half-open door, like he expected something to crawl up. A cold chill ran down my spine, the kind of feeling you get when you're a child and you automatically run up your stairs because you think you're being chased. I moved toward the sink as he slinked past me, then he shut it firmly and leaned against it, breathing hard. You just don't need to go down there, he muttered. It's damp. It's not safe. Not safe? I snapped. It's a basement, not Chernobyl. Jesus, Ethan, you need to make your mind up. You're either invested in us or you're not. Pick one. He didn't answer. Just locked the door and slipped the key into his pocket. That was the moment my confusion curdled into something uglier. Suspicion. Distrust. Rage. Whatever it was, it meant one thing. I wasn't welcome in my own damn house. His phone buzzed on the table. I looked at it, then at him. He didn't move, didn't even flinch. Just stood there with his hand buried in his pocket, the basement key pressed tight against his thigh. Aren't you going to get that? I asked. He shook his head. It's nothing. Nothing. Right? The screen lit up again. It was face down, but I could see the glint of light reflecting off the table as I walked away. My blood boiled. Nothing had a name. Nothing had a number. Nothing had secrets he couldn't show me. Now all I'm left with is nothing. The next week was hell. The morning sickness ramped up, and I was wrecked with guilt and anxiety about not telling him. But the bastard didn't deserve to know. What if the reason he didn't want another baby was because he was already shacking up with someone else? Jessie was only 7 months old. This must have been going on since before her, because he shut me down the second she was born. Every retch over the toilet, every wave of nausea, I thought of him sneaking around while I carried his child. My body ached, my stomach turned, and still I kept my mouth shut. And yet, I didn't leave. With every buzz of his phone, every late night, every diverted question, I still stayed. Because deep down, I was scared. Scared to be a single mother of 2. Scared to be divorced at 30. Scared to be alone. It makes me wonder now, though. If I had left, would things be different? That night I woke to the sound of Ethan screaming. For a second I thought it was Jessie, but her soft breaths came steady from the cot beside me. My heart hammered as I crept down the stairs. The smell hit me before I reached the bottom. Patchouli. Thick and cloying, like the air itself had soured. He was on the sofa, hunched over, sweat dripping down his temples. His chest heaved like he'd run a mile. What the hell is going on? I snapped. Who have you had in here? His head shot up, eyes wide. She's here? Where? My blood ran cold. So, you admit it. What? No, I mean... He dragged a hand across his face, forcing calm that wasn't there. Cara, no one's here. It's just work stress, that's all. You're imagining things. But the patchouli clung to his skin, his clothes, the sofa cushions. And in his eyes, I saw something I couldn't name. Don't fucking gaslight me. I spun on my heel and stormed back upstairs, every step shaking with rage. Cara, wait, please, he called after me, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. I shoved the bedroom door, but he caught it before it closed, slipping inside. "You've got it wrong," he pleaded, voice cracking. "There's no one else, I swear." "Then why the hell does it smell like her perfume in my house?" I shot back, yanking the covers. "Why do you keep lying to me?" He reached for me. "Don't fucking touch me." I flinched. His hand hovered, then stilled on my arm. His face changed. "Cara, what's this?" I looked down. Dark smudges, finger-shaped, blooming across my skin. I pulled away fast, heart racing. "Don't change the subject," I snapped, pulling my arm back. He ignored me. His eyes were still fixed on the bruises. "Do you have any more marks?" Before I could answer, his hands were on me, pushing up my sleeve, brushing over my skin like he was checking for evidence. "Ethan, stop!" I shoved at him, but he didn't listen. His palms slid lower, across my stomach, and he froze. I realized too late what he'd felt. The slight swell beneath my nightshirt, soft but undeniable. His face drained of colour. "You're pregnant," he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. My heart stopped. I was frozen in something between terror and shame. For a second I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only felt the weight of his hand against my stomach. His hands lingered there, his thumb brushing across my belly in a slow, absent caress. This wasn't the touch of a man planning to leave. "Yeah," I whispered back. His body sagged with what looked like quiet resignation. "I tried so hard to stop this," he whispered, voice breaking. My stomach knotted. "Stop what?" I choked out. "Another baby with me? Or another secret with her?" "There's no her, Cara. Not in the way you think, anyway." I pulled away from him then, cold rushing into the space between us. He had just admitted it. Right there, in front of me. As his hand lingered on the child growing inside me. My throat burned as the words rattled around in my head. "Not in the way you think." That was it? The confession. Proof I wasn't crazy after all. "You've been lying to me this whole time," I hissed, clutching my stomach like I could shield the baby from him. "Dragging me through hell while you sneak off to her." Ethan shook his head hard, reaching for me again. "Cara, no, it's not like that. Don't touch me." My voice cracked, but I held my ground. "You made me believe I was paranoid. You made me doubt myself. And all along, you had someone else." His face crumpled. "It's not what you think." But I'd already decided what it was. "I want you out." The words slipped out before I even had time to process them. He looked at me with something close to terror in his eyes. "No," he croaked. "Yes." I doubled down, my voice shaking. "Get out." "You're not safe," he whispered. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I thought he meant from him. From the man who had just confessed another woman. But now, looking back, I know that wasn't what he meant at all. I slammed the bedroom door in his face and went to Jessie, scooping her up with shaking hands. She buried her wet face in my neck, her tiny fists clinging to me as if she could feel it too. That smell hit me again. Patchouli. Thick, choking, sweet, in a way that made my stomach twist. "What the fuck, Ethan?" I snapped, rocking Jessie against me. "Get her out of here." My own words froze in my throat. Her. I didn't even know why I said it. Yanked open the door, Jessie pressed tight against me. Ethan stood there in the hallway, his face drained of colour. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring straight ahead, past my shoulder, breathing fast, eyes wide, too scared to move. For a heartbeat, the air thickened, and I felt it too. The weight of something else standing with us, unseen but heavy enough to press against my skin. Then it was gone, along with the smell of patchouli, like it was sucked out of the air. Ethan stood frozen at my door, like a rabbit caught in headlights. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice barely a thread of sound over Jessie's wails. Ethan's lips moved, his eyes still locked forward. "She wants her debt paid." My stomach dropped. "What debt?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. His whole body shook like a man trying not to break. Jessie screamed against my shoulder, and I clutched her tighter, terror clawing up my spine. I sat cross-legged on the bed, staring at the digital clock. The rhythmic flashing of 6 a.m. soothed something inside me. Ethan rocked Jessie silently in her crib. We hadn't slept since the incident at the door. I hadn't asked for an explanation yet, and Ethan hadn't offered one. Tap, 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 tap. The sound made us both jump. "What the fuck is that?" Ethan exclaimed, pointing to the half-cracked window. Perched on the sill sat a crow, the morning light reflecting off its feathers. My heart settled. Chill. It's Jerry. The crow I feed when I can't sleep. He's kind of got into a routine. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Crows aren't white." "This one is." I crossed the room and picked a cracker off the dresser, slipping it through the crack in the window. Jerry snapped it up neatly, white feathers gleaming in the pale light. He seemed to nod a thank you before disappearing back into the gloom. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan's voice cut through the silence. I glanced back at him, frowning. "It's just a crow." "Not the crow, Cara." His eyes didn't leave mine, wide and unblinking. "About the baby." "I was scared, Ethan," I whispered. "I thought you hated me. I thought you didn't want me." "Of course I do," he said quickly, almost tripping over the words. "I love you, Cara. More than anything. You just don't understand? Then make me understand." My voice rose sharper than I meant it to. Jessie stirred in her crib, gave a soft whimper, then settled back into sleep. Ethan's hands twitched, like he wanted to reach for me but didn't know how. "Cara, please. You have to know, this isn't about you. It's about... About what? Your needs? My lack of attention? What?" The words were out before I could stop them, and they hit us both harder than I expected. "No." He flinched, almost angry now. "God, no. It's not about that. It's..." His eyes dropped to the floor, and I saw it. The weight of something he was holding back, something darker than I could guess. "Then what is it, Ethan?" I pushed. "What is so bad that you've been hiding it all this time?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like the words wouldn't come. "You were so sad, Cara, after Oscar. Don't you dare blame this on me." "Listen, please," he begged. And I did. The words that came out of his mouth were like something from a B-rated horror movie. I was hurting too after Oscar. But everyone is always so focused on the mother, the father gets forgotten. I found a forum, a website for dads just like me. We had all lost a child in one way or another. It was comforting. His voice shook, but there was almost relief in getting it out. We talked, shared stories. Then one of them, Alex, messaged me directly. Said he could help. Said there were ways. That there's someone you can go to if you were struggling. I frowned. guilt rising in my throat. Ethan. Please. I need to get this out. It's important now more than ever. He cut in quickly, eyes wide. She helps. She bargains. If you want a child, she'll give you one. All she asks is that, in time, you give her something back. He rubbed at his face, trembling. It sounded mad at first, like a horror story. But Alex swore it worked. He said he had proof. And Cara, I thought maybe this was our chance. Our second chance. The room felt colder. The words didn't sound like comfort. They sounded like chains being snapped shut. This person, I started. No, see, that's the thing. She's not really a person. Not anymore. That's what made it unbelievable. But he showed me. He had his son, Max, after his wife was diagnosed infertile. All he had to give in return was his voice. He was rambling now, speaking too fast. I wasn't sure if he was trying to convince me or himself. I opened my mouth to interject, but he cut me off. He was a singer. It wasn't his job. He just liked to do it, see? She wants something you treasure, but you don't know the true value of until it's gone. Something you won't realize you'll miss until she's taken it. Now he can't speak above a whisper. That's why I was getting so many texts. Or if he called, I'd leave the room. It's hard to hear him. He nodded at me like explaining it this way would make it all make perfect sense. Outside the door, the floor creaked. A long dragging sound moved down the hall. My chest tightened. I forced a laugh, brittle and too loud. So what, Ethan? You think some whispering bogey woman hands out miracle babies in exchange for party tricks? Do you hear yourself? The smile fell from my face as the sound outside the door stopped dead. The silence pressed in. I dropped my voice. What did she ask you for? Ethan's eyes were fixed on me, wide and glassy in the dim light. He looked like a man who had already answered that question 100 times in his head, but never out loud. The one thing I wanted was a large family. Ethan's voice was raw, almost broken. She wanted my ability to have more kids. An unexpected snort escaped me. My body relaxed a little. Well, that's not true, is it? I put a hand to my stomach. Look at me. He shook his head, eyes shining. No, you don't understand. You can still get pregnant. You can still have a baby. That's not what she took. His breath shuddered out. She wants to take them, all of them. Every subsequent child after Jessie. The words hollowed me out. For a second I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The sound outside the bedroom door came again. A dragging weight against the floorboards, as if something was waiting for us to accept the bargain. I stared at him, horror knotting in my chest. He grabbed my wrist like he was begging me to believe him. I tried not to get you pregnant, Cara. Can't you see? I did this for us. Tried not to get me pregnant. The words tore out of me. What the fuck, Ethan? You're not an animal. You slept downstairs so you didn't get me pregnant. For fuck's sake, you could have had a vasectomy. His face crumpled. I didn't think of that. The room went ice cold. What? I whimpered, eyes darting between his and the bedroom door. Before I could answer, something slammed against the door so hard the frame rattled. Then came the scratching, slow, deliberate, like nails dragged down the wood grain. The sound set my teeth on edge. A sickly wave of patchouli seeped under the door, thick and wrong, as if the room itself was filling with her breath. I pressed both hands to my stomach and couldn't stop shaking as Ethan ran over, pressing his hands against the door. That's her, isn't it? I said. my voice barely more than a breath. Ethan's hand stayed on the flimsy wood. His knuckles were white. "Yes," he whispered. "It's her." The scratching paused, like she had been listening for his answer. Then it dragged across the wood again, slower, crueler. "She knows you know now," he said. "She knows you're not happy. She knew you were pregnant. That's why it started up again. And now she's impatient." My throat tightened. Impatient. That's what the text meant. I stood from the bed, frantic now. Alex must know how to stop this. The scratching started again, dragging lower this time, closer to the floor. The smell of patchouli thickened until it sat on my tongue. Jessie's cry split the air, high and panicked from the corner of the room. I stumbled to the cot and scooped her up, pressing her trembling body to my chest. Ethan fumbled his phone out of his pocket, hands shaking so hard he almost dropped it. He jabbed at the screen, pressed it to his ear. "Alex," he hissed. "She's here. Tell me what to do." Static. Then a rasping whisper. "I can't hear you." Jessie's cries escalated as the banging and scratching increased in volume. "Say again?" Ethan cried, plugging his ear with his other hand, back firmly planted on the door. His face drained of colour. "Agree," he said, nodding frantically at me. "Just agree out loud." I clutched Jessie tighter, her wails hot against my neck. Agree to what? The scratching at the door stopped. The silence on the other side was worse than the sound. "Agree to give her the baby," he pleaded. I clutched Jessie tighter. Her little fists knotted in my shirt. My throat was raw, but the word wouldn't come. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm not giving her anything." Ethan's face twisted, a mix of fear and despair. He pressed the phone harder to his ear, as if Alex could crawl through and fix it for him. "No," I whispered again, laying my hand gently against Jessie's damp cheek. "I won't." On the other side of the door, the scratching stopped. A heavy silence filled the room. Silence. Jessie no longer cried in fear. She no longer cried at all. She wasn't breathing. Her arms released from my shirt and flopped lifelessly to her side. "Ethan!" I screamed. He spun toward me, eyes wide, the phone slipping from his hand and clattering to the floor. Jessie's head lolled against my chest. Her lips parted, her skin already cooling. Ethan dropped to his knees beside us, hands fumbling uselessly. "No, no, no, don't let her take her instead," pressing his hands to her tiny chest, breathing into her mouth, begging between gasps. Come on, breathe for me, baby girl, please." I could still hear the phone, Alex's voice rattling out of the speaker in a broken croak. Agree. My hand shook as I reached for it. I pressed it to my ear and heard him sobbing, whispering the word again and again, a desperate chant. I looked at Ethan, hunched and frantic, trying and failing to bring Jessie back. The room smelled of patchouli, thick as smoke, pressing in on all sides. My throat closed, but the word forced itself out, a broken whimper into the void. "Okay. I agree." For a heartbeat, nothing. Then Jessie arched in Ethan's arms with a sharp, rattling gasp. Her tiny chest rose, a cry bursting out of her that split the silence. I crawled to her, sobbing, and held them both against me, kissing her damp hair as her fists tightened in my shirt again. Ethan fell back on his heels, tears streaking his face, staring at her like she was both a miracle and a curse. The scratching at the door was gone, but the smell of patchouli still lingered. "I'm 20 weeks pregnant today," a boy. We sat at the ultrasound with faces like stone. Ethan won't look at the pictures. He just stares at my stomach like it's already a grave. I don't know why I'm writing this here. Maybe I just need someone to tell me what to do. Maybe someone has heard of her before. The Hollow Lady. Because if Ethan is right, the baby growing inside me doesn't belong to me at all. It belongs to her. So, I agreed to kill my baby. Sounds crazy, I know. I wasn't going to write this. I told myself I needed to focus on learning how to cope with loss again, on coming to terms with something I couldn't see, something waiting to rip my baby from me the moment it was born. But even with what happened, I need to remember I agreed to this. I'm writing this from a place of healing. You might not think I deserve peace, but I do. I'll start from where I left off. That way, when I'm ready, I can put it together and maybe give it to someone that can help me. At first, I thought Ethan was the problem. I thought the late nights, the hidden phone, the messages from Alex, and there was another woman. That would have been easier. I could have hated him for cheating, and I could have left. But it wasn't that simple. It was never another woman. It was her. The Hollow Lady. Sounds made up, right? Yeah. That's what I thought too, until Ethan let her write to us. To me. She's not a person. Not anymore. But in order to save my living baby, I had to promise her my unborn child. The deal was made with Ethan. We couldn't have kids naturally, so Ethan turned to dark magic to help. We got to have Jessie in return for any and all subsequent babies. I didn't know any of this until it was too late. Until I was already pregnant with my second. Until she came knocking to collect her debt. Once she heard I was trying to back out of the deal I didn't agree to, she tried to take Jessie back. You need to understand, I didn't have a choice. My only child was dying in front of me. You can't tell me you wouldn't have done the same. I was 37 weeks pregnant when I finally snapped. We had just returned from a growth scan at the hospital. I'd been going every fortnight since 32 weeks. That was when the labour scare happened. The contractions had started thick and fast, seemingly out of nowhere. Any normal premature labour would bring panic, but for me, the grief and dread overrode any other sense. I'd felt this baby kick and wriggle inside of me since I was 20 weeks. And I knew the minute it was born, she would take it. I wasn't ready to let go. The doctors, they weren't really even going to try and stop it. They said the weight was good, the lungs should be strong enough to just need a little oxygen. Survival rate was 95%. But I knew if that baby took a breath, its survival rate would be 0. We sat in silence in the car. The sonographer's sweet voice looped in my head as she smiled and said everything looked fine. The baby was growing well. I should have felt relief. Instead, all I could think about was the smell in the room when I begged them to stop the labour. That same sickly wave of patchouli clinging to the curtains, seeping through the vents, and in the corner, just for a second, between contractions, I thought I saw her. A shadow stretched too long to belong to any human. The labour stopped on its own. Later, I read that stress can inhibit the release of oxytocin and slow or stall labours. Maybe that was it. Or maybe she was toying with me. I sat across from Ethan at the dinner table, warming my hands on a too bitter coffee. The steam curled into my face, making my eyes sting. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. We should give him a name. Ethan didn't look up. He pushed the last of his dinner around his plate with the side of his fork, like if he stalled long enough, I'd take the words back. There's no point, he muttered at last. His voice was flat, but his knuckles whitened around the fork. I felt my stomach twist. The baby kicked hard against my ribs, as if demanding I argue back. I wanted to scream, to throw the cup across the room, but all I managed was a whisper. He deserves a name. Ethan finally looked at me then, and in his eyes, I didn't see anger or cruelty. I saw resignation, the look of a man who believed he'd already buried his son. Name or not, Cara, in 3 weeks' time, you won't be ours anymore. Ethan choked the words out, failing to hold back tears. He wiped them away quickly with the back of his hand and looked away. He's ours right now, I said softly. I don't want to give up hope yet. He shoved the chair back, the screech of the legs driving nails into my brain. There's nothing we can do. Isn't there? I shot back. She seemed pretty pissed off when I didn't agree to the deal. Yeah, Ethan said bitterly. And it almost killed Jessie. I know. My voice dropped to a solemn whisper. But think about it. If she needed me to agree, she must be bound by something, right? Deals, promises, rules. What do you mean? He asked, slumping back into his seat, defeated. I could see the weariness etched into his face. He sighed, resting his chin on his hands. This wasn't the first time I'd had a question, or idea, or theory. They never amounted to more than disappointment or heartache, but I wasn't willing to just sit back and let this happen. I mean, maybe there's a way out, I pressed. Why was she banging on the other side of that door like a pissed-off toddler? Ethan's head shot up, eyes flicking around the room like the mere thought of mocking her might call her back. She wanted to scare you, he whispered cautiously. Yeah, but why? If she was all-powerful, why did she need to scare me into submission? He raised an eyebrow, unease creeping into his expression. She needed my agreement, Ethan. That means she can't just take what she wants, not without rules to follow. And if there are rules, maybe there's a way to break them. He shook his head. But I was the one who made the deal with her. But I'm the one making the payment, I shot back. He's my baby too, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I barked a bitter laugh. Oh, fuck off, Ethan. You donated a cell and 30 seconds of your time to make this baby. The rest has been me, my body, my blood, my fear. His face crumpled. The fight went out of him all at once. And for the first time, I saw him small, broken. I'm sorry, he whimpered, finally breaking. His shoulders shook as the words scraped out of him. I'm so sorry, Cara. I've never been good with emotions. I've plenty of my own to deal with. Someone else's is awkward. I reached out for his hand across the table, pulling it closer, and caressed it with my thumb. I didn't know what to say. I'd waited for this breakdown for weeks. The acceptance that what he had done wasn't in our best interests. It was in his. I'd waited for this apology. Now that it was here, I didn't even want to gloat. It just felt wrong. It'll be okay. He shook his head. His eyes swollen and red, still never meeting mine. It doesn't matter. The minute you defied her, she went for the next best thing. Jessie almost died. Do you really want to test her again? I don't want to just give up. My voice cracked, the weight of it spilling out. I won't. Ethan pulled his hand away gently, dragging it over his face, slumping lower in his chair. Every time you get your hopes up, it just makes the fall worse. There's no loophole, Cara. There's no way around this. I nodded once and stood slowly, unsure if it were the weight of the baby or the weight of the responsibility to fix this on my own making me struggle to my feet. His words didn't kill the thoughts spiraling in my head. If there were rules, there had to be a story behind them. And if there was a story, someone out there knew it. I found myself sitting frustrated in the only library in Corvus Vale at 37 plus 4 weeks pregnant. The chair groaned under me as I shifted for the 100th time, trying to find a position that didn't make my back ache or my ribs throb from the baby's kicks. Books were spread out across the table like a crime scene. Folklore, local history, old parish records. I'd pulled everything I thought might hold an answer, but all of them were useless. There was plenty of ghost stories, but they were all clearly fictional. A few dusty volumes on real documented witch trials dating back to the 16th century, but not a single mention of her. No hollow lady. Christ, I even tried YouTube, but ended up going down a Google rabbit hole on why some pasta was creepy. I snapped the last book shut, the sound echoing through the halls, earning a glare from the librarian. I muttered an apology I didn't mean, and hauled myself up, using the table as leverage, wincing at the pressure in my hips. 37 weeks pregnant, and about as graceful as a tank. The rain hit me the second I stepped outside, cold and sharp. I pulled my coat tighter, head down against the drizzle. That's when it happened. Something whizzed past my ear, close enough to stir the hair on my cheek. I ducked instinctively, my heart slamming against my ribs. Jesus Christ! I yelped into the empty street. For a second, I thought it was a drone. But when I spun around, all I caught was a flash of white feathers disappearing around the corner. A bird. My bird. Jerry? The name slipped out before I could stop it, and against my better judgment, I followed him. The side street was narrow and slick with patches of damp moss, the kind of place you'd normally cross the road to avoid. The crow's white feathered glowed against the grey as it expertly manoeuvred itself through a half-open shop door. Madame Morrigan's Morbid Curiosities. The words curled across the rotting wood in faded gold paint. Beneath it, the shop window was crammed with strange clutter. Antique knives, cloudy jars, bones, half-melted candles. It looked less like a display and more like a murder weapon dump site. I swallowed hard and turned away. I hadn't taken 2 steps before Jerry crowed loudly behind me. I spun to see him perched on the sill. He tilted his head once, sharp and deliberate, then hopped down and flooded back inside, like he had led me here on purpose. Yep, I mouthed. Totally normal. The bell above the door gave a weak, uneven chime as I pushed it open. The air was thick and stale. Not the choking patchouli I'd come to dread, but something heavier. Dust, melted candle wax, the faint metallic tang of rusting iron. Shelves leaned against the walls, every one of them crowded with things that had felt stolen from graves. Cloudy jars with labels too faded to read, cracked porcelain dolls with eyes that followed me, strings of bird skulls looped together like rosary beads. Weird. In the corner, the white crow shifted inside its oaken cage, feathers gleaming unnaturally bright against the gloom. It clicked its beak once, before hopping to the edge of the cage, as if to mark my arrival. A woman stood behind the counter, draped in a black lace and velvet shawl, her long grey hair pinned back with what looked disturbingly like bones. Her eyes caught mine instantly, sharper than knives on display. "You are late," she said. Her voice was soft and low, carrying the weight of someone who already knew why I was there. I am?" I stuttered, raising an eyebrow. Her bangles chimed as she gestured to the white crow. "He has been circling you for weeks, trying to lead you here." The crow cawed sharply as if in agreement. "He's been sitting at my window, eating the last of my biscuits," I muttered. Madame Morrigan's lips curved, not quite a smile. "Nothing bound to me lingers without reason. Feeding him wasn't the reason. Although, he is partial to a custard cream," she said as she glided over to his cage and shut the latch. "Why then?" I asked. "It seems you're in a spot of bother," she said casually. "That is why you're standing in my shop instead of burying your child." My face dropped. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Me? Oh, many things. Small business owner, fortune teller, collector of fine items." She gestured around the cluttered shop like she was showing off a school science project. "Friends call me Madame Morrigan, and you, my dear, are suspicious as fuck," I cut in. For a long moment she just stared at me, then her shoulders began to shake. A laugh spilled out, low and rasping. The sound of dry leaves scraping together. "Oh, I do like you," she said at last, eyes glittering in the gloom. "Sharp tongue. Shame that never saves anyone." The crow cawed again, loud enough to make me flinch. "Can you help me?" I pleaded. My voice cracked. I hated how small it sounded. Madame Morrigan's expression shifted. The smile didn't fade, but it changed. Softer, colder, the way someone might look at a child holding a broken toy. "No. You made a promise to Constance Arthur. We are taught from infanthood, promises must not be broken." "No, I didn't. I don't know who that is," I said sharply. "You have met the Hollow Lady, yes?" she asked, drifting past me to the door. The key turned with a soft click as she locked it. A prickle of anxiousness shot up my spine like electricity. "Yes," I whispered, the words leaving my mouth like a confession. "Then you have met Constance Arthur," she smiled, leaving the key in the lock and gesturing for me to follow. I stalled, heart hammering. Should I run or hear her out? I didn't know this woman, and I didn't know if I was safe. But I did know one thing. I needed help, and I was running out of time. The chair creaked under my weight as I sat across from Madame Morrigan. I wiggled uncomfortably, trying to ease the pressure on my back, while she flipped through a large book with a faded leather cover. The pages crackled like dry leaves, edges browned and curling with age. Symbols and cramped handwriting sprawled across the parchment. Some looked like prayers, others like curses. I couldn't tell the difference. She stopped on a page marked with a ribbon the colour of dried blood. Her bangles chimed as she pressed her palm flat against it, keeping it open. "This is where her chapter begins," Madame Morrigan said, eyes fixed on the page, but voice aimed squarely at me. "Would you like to hear her story? Will it help me save my baby?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "Probably not," she said, then added, "but it might help you understand what you are up against." Behind me, the crow shifted in its cage nervously. Madame Morrigan began. Constance Arthur was born in Corvus Vale in 1616. She was the daughter of a healer, and she grew up among roots and herbs, learning the quiet craft of charms and midwifery. By the time she was grown, she had become a midwife herself, respected and trusted. She turned the brittle page. She married Stanley Arthur, a carpenter of good standing. At first, they were happy, but her womb was a grave. Several miscarriages followed their marriage, then a stillbirth. The midwives brought talismans and silver rattles to her bedside, hoping to ward off spirits they blamed for her losses. At last, she bore a daughter. She named her Mercy Stanley, but Mercy only lived 16 days. And that was Stanley's last straw. I swallowed hard, heat crawling up my throat. So she was like me. Indeed she was, child, but just as two loaves may start from the same dough, if mistreated, one may rise, and the other may sour. She cleared her throat. "There's more," she began. Whispers spread through the vale that Constance was cursed, that her touch spoiled children. Stanley turned bitter, then cruel, and at last denounced her outright. To save himself, he accused his wife of witchcraft. Constance was brought to trial during the witch hunts. She was sentenced to hang in 1636. It was said that in desperation, Constance called out not to a god, but to something else, and it listened. The day of the execution, it was documented the rope snapped, not once, but 6 times. The magistrates called it a sign of God's will, but the people of Corvus Vale whispered it was something else entirely. The crow cawed once, sharp and sudden. She was spared but not freed, exiled to Hollowthorn Forest, east of here, alone. And then the rumours began that her dark magic could help barren women, that she could succeed where medicine and prayer had failed. And so they went to her, begged her, and she gave. Always in exchange for a bargain. My hands folded protectively over my stomach before I even realised. Oregon's eyes glittered in the lamplight. Each bargain etched away at her soul. Even after her death in 1720, the needy still came scratching symbols into walls and leaving offerings, praying she might hear them. And those who prayed too loud sometimes found their prayers answered. By then, she was no longer known as a wife, no longer as a midwife, only the Hollow Lady. She shut the book with a crack that made me flinch. "And you, child, are in her path." My mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" Morrigan leaned forward, bangles chiming as her arms folded on the table. Her eyes were steady and unblinking. "It means you are bound to her now." Constance Arthur was a woman betrayed by broken vows, a husband who swore to love her, then cast her aside, a court that promised her death, yet left her swinging in limbo. She swore she would never lose another child, and she kept that promise. That is why she clings to every oath, every word, every silence. To her, a promise is not a comfort, it is a chain, and she will not let this go. The crow fluttered around in its cage, cawing again and again as if sealing the words. Back in the front of the shop, I was struggling to get back into my still-soaked coat when Madame Morrigan slid the book across the counter. Beside it, she sat down a pouch of coarse salt, a small vial of holy water, and a bundle of dried herbs tied with a red string. "I'll loan you the book. Use the salt as protection, water for cleansing, and this," she tapped the herbs, "to burn if you must call her off in a hurry. Not that it will save you for long." I gathered them up, stuffing them into my bag, the cracked leather cover rough and heavy in my arms. My chest felt tight with a strange mix of dread and relief. I thanked her and turned to leave. Morrigan chided, her bangles clinking as she held out a hand. "That will be £12.97, please." I blinked. "Seriously?" Her lips curved. "I told you, child. I run a small business." I struggled to keep my swollen feet balanced on the cushions underneath them as the baby kicked against the book resting on my stomach. "What's that?" Ethan asked, flopping onto the sofa beside me. 50 Shades of Grey Haunted Edition, I muttered, without looking up. He smirked and reached for it. "Didn't think that was your type." I let him take it, watching his face shift as he flipped through the brittle, ink-stained pages. The smirk faded fast. "This isn't funny," he whispered. His thumb traced a line of cramped writing, his eyes wide and glassy. "Cara, this is it. This is the same spell, the one I used." I swiped the book back from him, studying the page. "You had this book?" I scowled. "You had this book and you didn't read about who the fuck she was first?" "No," he protested, hands up like I had a knife to his throat. "Alex sent me a spell with a list of instructions. I didn't have any book." The words sank like stones in my chest. Alex again. Always Alex. "So, you just, what, recite this without question?" My voice cracked between rage and disbelief. "I was desperate," he said. His voice broke on the word, his hands dragging down his face. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't," I snapped, clutching the book tighter. My eyes scanned over the page, reading what Ethan read all those months ago aloud. Ingredients: a circle of salt to keep her in, a token of loss for things that have been, water and oil, the scent of earth. "That was patchouli," Ethan interrupted. "Oh, I fucking know." "A candle of black, to bind the birth. The invocation." "Hollow lady, hear my plea. Take my grief and answer me. Mother who lost, who swore no more. Open for me your shadowed door. I bring you pain, I bring you need. I bring the blood of broken seed. Give me a child, and let it grow, and I will grant what you claim I owe. The choice is always yours to set. I will freely pay you for my debt, for a chain must be willingly clasped, or it cannot hold, nor ever last." "A chain must be willingly clasped," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, I had to do it willingly, so I had to say all that stuff about paying my debt freely." "You did," I shot back. "But I didn't." "Yeah, you did. In the bedroom." His voice was flat, resigned. "You agreed when she threatened Jessie." "When she threatened Jessie, Ethan." He just stared at me blank-faced. For Christ's sake. I hauled myself upright, heat flaring in my chest. Threatening someone into submission isn't willingness. That's agreement under duress. This isn't law and order, Cara, he muttered, scrubbing his hands down his face again. She's not going to care about semantics. She's an evil demon, not a judge. Then why put it in the spell? I snapped. I think I'm onto something here. The baby kicked in agreement, and I pressed a hand to my stomach. Ethan hesitated, knuckles pressed wide against his knees. Maybe it's tradition. Maybe there's some rule even demons have to follow. Maybe it's a loophole. I don't know, Cara. I just needed to say it as is, even if she had to twist our arms until they broke. My voice shook. The memory of Jessie's wide, terrified eyes flashed in my mind, and my hands clenched into fists. He looked away, picking at a loose thread on his cuff, jaw tight. You think I don't know that? You think I don't hate it? I dragged in a shaky breath. So what do we do now? If the chain only holds because I said yes, but I didn't really, then maybe there's a way to break it, he finished, hope flickering briefly in his tired eyes. Or at least bend it, I muttered. Demons love their loopholes, don't they? A rueful smile touched his lips, almost as much as solicitous. I thought that if anybody could help us figure this out, it would be Madame Morrigan. I planned to take Ethan with me to see her the next day, but from the night we had that discussion, we hit trouble. It was like the Hollow Lady knew we were up to something. My contractions started up again, and at 37 plus 6, the hospital weren't willing to stop them. Slow labour, they said. 1 centimetre dilated, if anybody's interested. The contractions weren't regular, so they sent me home with the usual advice. Stay comfortable, stay calm, rest. That morning, I lay in bed, gritting my teeth through a particularly strong contraction, pleading with Ethan. You can choose. Honestly, I promise I won't even veto any of your choices. Cara. His voice was soft, almost breaking. I'm sorry. I can't give him a name. Please, I groaned through the pain. At least for his headstone. Ethan let go of my hand, kissed my forehead, and left without a word. I listened to the click of the front door as he stepped into the chilly air. My heart sank. I'd never felt so alone. A faint waft of patchouli lingered in the air, drifting up, as if carried by the door closing downstairs. Oh, fuck off, I winced, rolling onto my side. He's not here yet, you bitch. The bedroom door slammed, and I sobbed myself to sleep. I'm not sure what woke me. Maybe the rays of afternoon sunlight burning through my eyelids. Maybe the gentle tapping of Jerry on the glass. But probably the overpowering smell of incense and the voice that sounded far too loud in the silence. I see we've changed profession. Madame Morrigan was in my bedroom, her long grey hair pulled back under a purple headscarf, the gold coin trim jingling with every movement. Ethan stood behind her, wearing a shy, nervous smile. Jessie waved at me from his hip. I let out a shaky laugh. He wasn't leaving me. He was bringing her to me. What? I croaked, straining to sit up. Ethan jogged to my side, arranging the cushions behind my back. We're going to fix this, he whispered. A detective. You've spotted a loophole in the spell, Morrigan said, her bangles chiming as she gestured towards the window. Do you mind? She pushed it open, letting Jerry hop inside. He fluttered to her shoulder as she went on, calm as if this were any ordinary house call. "I'm sorry, Cara. I'm bound by laws higher than I. I cannot interfere with bargains or bets on either side." She paused, the crow shifting on her shoulder as her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Unless the one caught in the bargain sees the way through themselves." My stomach tightened. "So, there is a way out." The bangles chimed again as she spread her hands wide. "Not out, no. More through. Or parallel." "What?" Ethan and I said at the same time. Morrigan chuckled softly. "A deal is a deal and must be fulfilled, but the payment for a deal requires a second, and a bargain made with chains already in place is no bargain at all. Luckily, a boon cannot be ungiven once promised, only balanced." I blinked at her. "Am I having a stroke?" I muttered to Ethan. "Can you do that again, in English? Please." Morrigan arched an eyebrow. "Did I stutter?" "I think I have it," Ethan said suddenly. "You were right. Because you didn't agree willingly. She can't take the new baby." "And what was the other bit?" He looked at Morrigan hopefully. She folded her hands. "If you make a deal with a shopkeeper, you take an item in exchange for money." We both nodded slowly. "But what happens if you have no money to give?" "You have to give the item back." Ethan trailed off, colour draining from his face. "Jessie," I whispered. "But," Morrigan cut in, "the spirit world is not bound by consumer law. Once a boon is being granted, it cannot be taken away." "She tried to take Jessie when..." My throat tightened. "She was tormenting you," Morrigan said flatly. "She is bound by laws, just as any other. However, there are no rules against causing you absolute misery. It is, in a sense, her vocation." "She got what she wanted because of that," Ethan muttered. "And that," Morrigan finished, "is where the problem lies." Her expression didn't shift, but her tone carried the weight of gravel. "That was naughty." We stared at her. "She cannot take your baby as payment, but payment still must be made." Morrigan's annoying bangles clinked as she sat in my rocking chair. She pulled a heavy book from a satchel and laid it across her lap. "There is a ritual. Old words, older syllables. You will need salt, flame, and her name spoken against her. It will call out her mistake, force her to face it, and once a spirit is confronted with its own broken law, it cannot take what it has no claim to." "That's it?" Ethan asked, barely daring to believe. "That's it," Morrigan said smoothly, though the crow on her shoulder gave a low, uneasy caw. I let out a shaky laugh of relief, pressing a hand to my belly as the baby rolled beneath my ribs. "Then we'll do it. Whatever it takes." Morrigan smiled, but her eyes stayed shadowed. "We could scrape something together for payment. She could have everything. The house, the money, my wedding ring. As long as my kids were safe, I didn't care." "What now?" Ethan asked. I cut off with a cry as a wave of pain ripped through me, stealing the air from my lungs. "Whatever it is, we don't have long." I clawed the covers back from my legs. The sheets beneath me were soaked through, spreading warm across the mattress. "My waters have broken." "Fantastic," Morrigan chimed, almost gleeful. "I work better under pressure." She moved towards her satchel, as if this was nothing more than a business appointment. Ethan hovered uselessly beside me, panic etched across his face. Neither of us noticed the shadow that crossed her expression for a fraction of a second. The truth she hadn't spoken, that in the end, the Hollow Lady's bargain always comes down to the same currency. A life for a life. Ethan helped me down the crooked basement steps as pain came thick and fast. "I can't do this," I cried as my legs buckled beneath me. "Yes, you can, my dear. Women have been doing this for centuries. In worse places than this, no less." Madame Morgan patted a thin throw blanket she had laid inside a wide circle of salt. "Come, sit. We will be with you." Ethan helped me step carefully over the salt and eased me down. The ice-cold concrete seeped through the throw and into my bones. "Get Jessie," I gasped through clenched teeth. Ethan returned a few moments later with our baby girl, settling her inside the circle with a tablet. She looked around briefly, then glued her eyes back to Peppa Pig, oblivious to the shadows creeping in at the edges. As Madame Morgan lit the last of the black candles, Ethan switched off the light and stepped into the circle. The basement seemed to fold in on itself, shadows gathering thick against the walls. "I can feel it, Ethan. He's gonna come soon," I panted, the pressure in my pelvis unbearable. Morgan sat cross-legged with a book, bangles chiming softly, ignoring my cries. She looked around with theatrical precision. "Okay. All present and correct? No pets, cats, dogs, hamsters you're particularly fond of still out there, no?" Another groan tore out of me. I couldn't even muster a glare. She clapped her hands. "Excellent. Then let us begin." Madame Morgan lowered her head, eyes skimming the book as she touched each candle flame in turn. The basement filled with a thick, cloying scent of patchouli, heavier than before, crawling into the back of my throat. I struggled to breathe. The shadows around the circle shifted. They weren't still anymore. They slid along the walls, stretching, dragging, as if something unseen was pacing just beyond the salt. Jessie's tablet flickered. Peppa Pig warped into static for a heartbeat before snapping back, her tiny giggle sounding cracked and wrong. Jessie didn't notice. She never looked up. Another contraction ripped through me. My fingers clawed into Ethan's arms. "She's here," I whispered, voice raw with terror. Madame Morgan didn't look up. "Good. Let her listen." She quickly scrawled the last of the words into the book and then began to read. "Constance Arthur, hear these words. Chains once forged are now disturbed. You gave the boon but sought for more. You hurt the child behind the door. A chain must clasp by willing hand, freely given, freely planned. But fear was used and threats were made. Thus law is broken, oath betrayed. Salt to bind and flame to see, we name your fault, we set it free. Your bargain stands but twisted, torn. You cannot claim this child once born." The last word left Madame Morgan's lips, her voice risen sharp and clear above the hum of the tablet. Salt hissed on the floor. The flames rose as a shadow stretched across the wall in front of us. It swelled and grew, long-limbed, head bent wrong, dragging itself higher until it loomed over the circle. Jessie's tablet died with a crackle, plunging her into silence. She didn't cry. She just stared wide-eyed at the shape that towered above us. A bolt of pain tore through me. I cried out, clutching Ethan's arm. The first sting of the baby's head burned low between my hips. "Hurry! He's coming!" I groaned, trying and failing to stay the urge to push. Madame Morgan rose to her feet, the crows shifting on her shoulder as the shadow loomed taller.
"Do not interfere, woman."
Constance rasped, hollow and low. The voice shook the salt line like a wind through broken glass.
This is not your concern.
You make it my concern when you falter on your oath, Constance, Morrigan replied calmly, her eyes never leaving the shadow's warped silhouette. The shadow grew taller, stretching grotesquely as it pressed against the salt boundary. The line hissed, grains scattering as though under invisible claws. Jessie whimpered, her eyes darting from the tablet's black screen to the looming shape above us. Her little hands clutched the edge of the throw, knuckles white. Ethan moved closer, torn between me and his daughter, shielding her with his arm. The gesture was laughably small against the enormity of the thing beyond the circle. Madame Morrigan lifted a hand. Hold steady. She cannot breach it without consent. I let out a pained cry as the baby's head crowned further. I can't hold it, I bellowed through gritted teeth. The shadow pressed harder against the salt, writhing until its head nearly brushed the ceiling. The hiss of the burning grains filled the room, and Jessie's whimper rose into a frightened cry. Then she spoke to me, softer, everywhere at once. Cara. My breath caught. My whole body seized with a contraction, the burn of the baby's head splitting me open. You suffer needlessly, Constance rasped. Let me ease it. One word, and the pain will end. One word, and the child will not suffer. He will serve his rightful place at my side, unburdened by life.
Forever.
I looked at her. You need to understand. I was in so much pain. I was tired. Then Ethan's voice tore through. No, he barked, clutching my hand. Don't listen to her. The shadow bent closer, its warped outline dragging along the walls. Her voice returned low and threatening.
You cannot keep what was promised. You cannot keep him.
He was never promised, Constance. Madame Morrigan's voice cut through, sharp as a slap. She sounded like she was scolding a child. With one last push, he was out, caught just in time by Ethan. His cries pierced the air, fierce and alive. Ethan tore off his jumper, wrapping him up before laying him against my chest. The shadow pressed harder, the salt lines sizzling and sparking, flecks landing in the candle flames and turning them a violent orange. Constance Arthur of Corvus Vale, granter of wishes, keeper of oaths, you may not enter, Morrigan barked. The baby wailed in my arms.
I am old,
Constance bellowed back, her voice shaking the window frames, dust falling from the beams above. You are not owed him, Morrigan's voice thundered back. An invisible wind picked up in the room, fluttering the pages of Morrigan's open book. The candles struggled to stay alight, and the salt started to stir, threatening to break the circle. Noise and shadows cost her nothing. Do not mistake theatre for power, Madame Morrigan said reassuringly. What do we do? Ethan pleaded. We can't stay here forever. He finished, his voice breaking. She needs payment, Morrigan said evenly. You have found a way through, but the deal still demands due. She can have anything, Ethan said quickly, desperation shaking every word. Anything, I echoed weakly, clutching the baby tighter. Morrigan looked at us both, with eyes that seemed older than the house itself. Her voice was low, solemn, final. The payment must be equal to what it was meant to be. My stomach churned cold. Ethan stared at her, unblinking. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Her bangles chimed as she folded her hands. "A life, Cara. For a life." Ethan remained silent, while I whispered a whimpering, "No." He moved in a numb state. Lifting Jessie into his arms, he buried his face in her hair, kissed her cheek, then gently set her back down. Sliding close, he wrapped himself round me, kissing the top of my head, whilst he stroked the baby's tiny hand. His eyes opened, and time seemed to slow around us. For a moment, we were suspended together in a place I wished I could have stayed forever. "He looks like me," Ethan said with a soft smile. His panic from moments before was gone, replaced by a calm that terrified me. "He does," I whispered back. "Will you call him Daniel, after my dad?" His voice was steady, even as he pushed himself to his feet. I froze, my heart seizing. "No." I clawed at his arm, refusing to let him move, but I couldn't stand. The cord still tethered me to the baby. I was too weak. Ethan pulled free with a gentle strength, turning towards Madame Morgan. She inclined her head knowingly, solemnly. "It began with a father's promise. It ends with a father's sacrifice." He nodded once and faced the hollow lady. The shadow bent low, its warped head lowered until it was level with his.
Who will pay?
The hollow lady asked, her voice hollow and low. "I will," Ethan said, calm, certain. "Don't leave me," I screamed until my throat was raw, but it was too late. Ethan looked over his shoulder and whispered, "I'll always be with you. I promise." He smiled softly and stepped from the circle. Nothing happened for a moment. Then the hollow lady whispered, low and final,
"I accept."
and Ethan's body dropped to the floor. The candles snuffed out, plunging the basement into suffocating darkness. The air calmed, and the blanket of patchouli faded. Time seemed to stretch for eternity as I wailed in grief and fear. A click overhead, and Madame Morgan was illuminated once more as she flicked on the bare light bulb. Jessie crawled across the circle towards Ethan's lifeless body. She tugged at his hair, waiting for the laugh, the smile, the arms that never came. When nothing happened, she turned back to me, eyes wide and wet, and let out a panicked cry that shattered my heart. I sobbed on the floor, clutching the baby he had tried so desperately not to have. "Please," I begged. "Please try CPR, call an ambulance, do something." Morrigan's voice was soft, but immovable. "If the deal is reversed, she will come for another. Let it be, Cara. I am sorry." She lifted Jessie into her arms. The child stilled almost instantly, pressing a wet face into the crook of Morrigan's neck. "Hush now, little one," she muttered. "Grief is loud, but love whispers on. Remember him not in silence, but in every laugh, every light, every breath you take." Madame Morrigan set Jessie down gently. Jessie blinked, picked up her now working tablet, and resumed Peppa Pig as if nothing had happened. Small giggles rising under the hum of the overhead light. From a bag, Morrigan drew a slender knife with a handle worn smooth by age. She crouched before me, her bangles still chiming softly as she worked. With calm precision, she helped deliver the placenta, then cut the cord that tethered me to the tiny, wailing boy in my arms. My tears blurred everything. "She took him from me," I whispered hoarsely. "She took Ethan. I swear. Oh." "Revenge." Morrigan's tone was cool, unreadable. "Revenge is only another chain, Cara. You have enough binding you already." She reached out, and I let her take the baby. I was too exhausted to resist. She cradled him against her chest, her sharp eyes softening just slightly as she studied his face. "Daniel," she murmured, almost to herself. "One day you will understand what was taken, and the Hollow Lady will know your name." She kissed his forehead and placed him back in my arms, her expression unreadable. I did ring an ambulance. On Madame Morrigan's instruction, I waited until there was no chance he could be revived. She cleaned up the salt, the candles, every trace of what had really happened before she left, so it could all be staged as a tragic accident. The official story's simple. I went into labour in the basement. I was too weak to climb the stairs. The stress made him collapse. The coroner's report says Ethan's heart just stopped. A rare condition. A hidden abnormal rhythm that can strike without warning. A genetic defect, they said. Something that could be passed down. Something that could mean Daniel and Jessie are at risk too. But I know better. There is no risk. Not from that. It's been exactly 6 weeks, 3 days, and 13 hours since Ethan sacrificed his life to save Daniel. But I don't think he's left us. You see, every morning since I returned home from the hospital, Jerry perches himself on the window. The thing is, his feathers look slightly duller than the gleaming white of the new crow he brought with him. And I know Ethan kept his promise. Hi everyone, thanks so much for listening. Hands up if you cried towards the end, because I definitely, probably did while writing it. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for being here and sharing these stories with me. Until next time, sleep well. Oh yeah. Fun fact you didn't ask for. I once stayed up until 3 AM convinced my fridge was haunted. Turns out it was just the ice maker. Good night.